For many years, we've marked this Sunday, Rogation Sunday, by going on a walk around the parish. In some years, our two parishes would meet together for a shared lunch at the end of the walk. As we went round the parish, we'd stop and pray at various farms and businesses and public buildings on our route and give thanks for their part in our village life. Traditionally, Rogation Tide is a time when people seek God's blessing on crops, animals, and human toil, and a time to remember God's generosity as our Creator. It's also a time to remember that we are part of a community, each depending on the skill and efforts of others for our daily existence. And although there is no formal Rogation walk this year, why not take up Pete's suggestion on the service sheet? Our focus today is on community and how we are called to serve it. I wonder what that word community means to you. A geographical district? A group of like-minded people with shared background or values? Or does it seem threatening to your sense of individuality? Does it express the idea of inclusive and supportive living? Today's three Bible passages show how the idea of community has evolved. 3,000 years ago, the psalmist wrote, "How good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity." This is community in its most basic form. God's people, a group of like-minded folk bound together by a shared faith, race, and nationality. And the psalm sets out an ideal for a small, self-contained group like that to live together in unity. But even a group of like-minded people may find living together in unity trying. And after 2 months of lockdown, there are probably many families who might well recognize that. But a community which has learned to live in unity is attractive to outsiders. Much later, Jesus would say to his innermost group of disciples, "By this, everyone you will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." And that's from John chapter 13, verse 35. 400 years after the psalmist, the prophet Jeremiah was writing to the Jewish exiles in Babylon. They were still a small group, distinct from their neighbors in belief and customs. And their sense of community would have been reinforced by the situation. They were deportees, taken away from their fellow countrymen, prisoners in an alien land. Jeremiah's message to them must have come as a bit of a shock. Rather than denouncing the Babylonians or encouraging the exiles to plan to escape or engage in some other form of civil disobedience, he tells them to make the best of their situation. Get on with life and settle down in Babylon. Significantly, at the end, he adds, "Also, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you in exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper." Now, there's an element of enlightened self-interest in this, but it's a reminder to the exiles, that small, hurting community, that they need to look outwards to the people among whom they now find themselves, however reluctantly. The boundary of community has become a bit blurred. Jeremiah is saying, we're all in it together, Babylonian and Israelite alike. Just as an individual cannot thrive in isolation, nor can a small, inwardly focused community. Finally, we come to Jesus' teaching from the Sermon on the Mount in the reading from Matthew. Jesus starts with a familiar phrase from the Old Testament. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor. And in this context, neighbor was taken to mean members of the wider Israelite community, people who shared your race and religion, not just those living nearby. Now, on this understanding, if you weren't a neighbor, you were considered an enemy. Gradually, the idea had crept in that those who you didn't love, you hated, although this was never set out in black and white. Jesus' opening line just reflects the interpretation common at that time, when he says, "You've heard that it was said, 'Love your neighbour and hate your enemy.'" But then he turns this idea on its head. "But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." And the reason Jesus gives for this goes far beyond self-interest. It's that you may be children of your Father in heaven. In other words, by doing so, we will show that our relationship to God is reflected in our action towards other people. Visibly loving your enemies isn't an entry ticket to God's kingdom. It's the natural result of belonging to it. As with other sayings from the Sermon on the Mount, this is a radical reworking of familiar Old Testament teaching. Jesus is getting to the very heart of the message and showing us a model of truly godly behaviour. So with these passages in mind, what is our own understanding of community, and how should we respond? We may feel we belong to a church, a village or parish, or a group of fellow employees at our place of work, or perhaps a network of people with shared interests. In each of these, there is a community we will identify with. And if we aim to model our behaviour on Jesus' example, we will instinctively want to serve each of those communities in a way appropriate to our abilities and to their needs. In our own local communities, as the threat of lockdown loomed, we saw dozens of examples of people recognising that there was going to be a problem and coming forward to help. Local support networks soon started assessing needs and coordinating help. And it was really heartwarming to find that many people who we thought could be in need were already being helped informally by people whose first reaction to the crisis was to pick up a phone and see if their friends or neighbours were okay. When two villages which prided themselves on having a strong sense of community were put to the test, they proved that they really did care for their neighbours. And the rapid and generous response to an urgent plea from the Hastings Food Bank showed that their care extended beyond the immediate community. I think we can all think of examples of people outside our villages who are doing their bit. And for the last 4 years, I've provided some pastoral support for readers in training at St Augustine's College of Theology in West Malling. And yesterday, I had an email from one of the staff. Her mother, a prolific seamstress, wanted to do something to help. So she decided to make protective face masks and was now selling them. All the proceeds would go to the college's bursary fund because it had been cleaned out due to the demands on it caused by the lockdown. The masks sold out within an hour or two of the first email. Fortunately, a second batch is now in production. Simple practical responses from an ordinary Christian lady, matching her personal skill to a known need, won't make the headlines in the way that Colonel Tom Moore's phenomenal fundraising efforts did. But acts like that are going on all around us, and we need to recognise them, give thanks for them, and draw inspiration from them. So in response to the question, where is God in the COVID-19 crisis? One answer is here in the community, and wherever people are trying to comfort and support others. And he's there beside Tanya as she wrestled with the issues of distributing PPE, and will be wherever she's employed next, and will be with all those others caring for our needs in trying circumstances. Of course, many of the people involved in these neighbourly acts of kindness may not consider themselves as Christians, but their actions shouldn't come as a surprise. After all, we are all made in God's image. And who are we to say where God can act or through whom he can act? Jesus goes further and points out that even those most despised by the Jews, which was the tax collectors, even they show care to their own. As he says, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? Jesus' challenge was that as children of a Heavenly Father, as people seeking to follow Jesus' own example of sacrificial service, we should be part of the good that is already being done, active in our various small communities, quietly expressing faith in action, but always ready to explain our motives when it's appropriate to do so. But we should also aim to go that bit further, as our concept of community should be wider than our immediate circles of family, friends, and colleagues. So, drawing together ideas from our readings today, as a community of Christians, we need to do three things. Have a firm foundation in unity, but don't forget that's not the same as uniformity. Be active in our commitment to the wider community, and be willing to reach out more widely in sacrificial service to others. If we do all that, we'll still not be perfect. Only Jesus achieved that. And nor will we have earned any special favour, but we will have shown that we are true children of our Heavenly Father. I'm going to close with words taken from our final hymn, and I'd like us to make those words our prayer. Let his love flow out to others. Let them feel a Father's care, that they too may know his welcome and his countless blessings share. Amen.